debut novel, a memoir titled Almost a Mother, Loss, Love, and Finding Your People When Your Baby Dies, was published this year by Orange Hat Publishing out of Waukesha. A fourth grade teacher by day, as well as a busy mama and wife, Christy has always relied on writing as a way to cope. Recently, she decided to use that strength as a way to help others so they don't have to feel alone. Christy is a regular member of the Friending podcast, a contributing writer to Still Standing, an online magazine about infant loss and grief, and a blogger at You Guys, a parenting adulting blog where she tries to infuse humor into everyday life. Christy resides in Pullman with her husband Brian and her two kids, Avery and Evan. Her twins, Sophie and Aiden, died in 2009, shortly after they were born. I had the opportunity to attend Christy's book release earlier this year, and since have found continued support in reading her story. After finishing it, I realized I needed to leave a review on Amazon, but I have not done that yet because I wanted to share it here. Just like reading Christy's blog 8 years ago, I was touched once again by her vulnerability to share everything she was experiencing through her journey of loss. Christy opens the door to ending stigma and to allowing others to grieve for however long it takes. Her words will comfort your heart and remind you that you are not alone. I personally cannot thank Christy enough for sharing her story of motherhood. The sunshine, the rain, and the rainbows. Please welcome Christy to the stage.
I made it difficult by choosing the other mic that nobody else wanted. I don't know what I did. Okay. I got equipment. About 6 months after my twins died, I noticed a voicemail on my phone from my coworker, Mike. Mike was not someone I chatted with on the phone, so I called him back right away thinking it must be something important. He told me that his sister-in-law had delivered a baby and something had gone wrong and the baby had been airlifted to a bigger hospital and it wasn't looking good. He asked me, could he give her my contact information if she wanted someone to talk to? Of course I agreed, even though I didn't feel qualified to help anyone through anything at that point. A week or two later, he called back and said that his niece's lungs had given up and she had died a few days earlier. He was hoping I would have coffee with his sister-in-law. The morning I was supposed to go meet Julie, I almost didn't go. I tried everything to get out of it, actually. It wasn't that I didn't want to help her, but it was that my anxiety was out of hand, thinking about trying to be the strong one for somebody else. I was still grieving so hard. When I got to the coffee shop, I noticed Julie right away because her face was red and blotchy with tears. I sat down and introduced myself, but she just kept staring down at her plate. I remember telling her, "It's okay if you just need me to sit here. I'll just be here with you." But her next words startled me. She said, "I have a confession to make, and I think you're gonna hate me." I laughed, because what kind of a confession could a stranger make that would end with me hating them? What she said next, though, really shocked me. She looked me in the eyes for a second, and then she looked down and she whispered, I know you don't recognize me, but I was a nurse in the NICU when your twins were dying." Tears sprang to my eyes then because she was right, I did not recognize her. It had all been such a whirlwind. She continued, that week I had just found out that I was pregnant. And as I stood against the wall, watching you watch them die, I thought to myself, thank God that is not me and my baby. And now look at me. Now my baby is dead. And I'm positive that I wished it upon myself. And I just needed to tell you I'm sorry and about how horrible I feel and how I wish so badly I could go back and take back those thoughts. That guilt is part of the reason why I now have devoted all of my extra time to going out and talking to bereaved families. Those thoughts did not cause her baby to die, and of course I didn't hate her, and of course I told her, look, if thoughts could do that and make it happen, every pregnant lady I see would walk past me at Target and immediately trip. We cried together, and we hugged, and we talked about what might have been. And then a few weeks later, we met up at her daughter Lydia's grave, and we put balloons and flowers on it. We started texting each other, and I maybe didn't realize it then, but I had found one of my people. I was about 21 weeks along in my pregnancy when I rolled over in bed and my water broke. My husband rushed me to the hospital where we spent a week on bed rest, waiting for the worst. Then a week at home, waiting for the worst. And I went into labor at about 24 weeks. My placenta was infected and my body decided it wanted it out. My daughter Sophie was born first. She died about 8 hours later. My son Aiden lived until the next day, but his placenta was infected too, and his lungs hadn't developed. And we went home from the hospital that day empty-handed. There is a crippling, staggering loneliness that comes along with a loss like this. We become terrified of forgetting our babies, even though it hurts so much to remember. We want to go out and have fun to distract ourselves, but we're afraid of leaving our houses. We're left alone with only our thoughts, and sometimes our thoughts are not that peaceful. In the silence that surrounded me, I convinced myself that I was to blame for what had happened, that I was the one who had hurt my babies, or that I hadn't been a strong enough woman to keep them. I convinced myself that now everyone I loved was going to die, and that somehow I deserved it. And everyone was telling me that everything happens for a reason, so I figured it must have been my fault. I had completely irrational thoughts, like I would wake up and reach down to feel the babies kicking only to remember that they were gone and it was just my imagination. I daydreamed that someone would come and tell me, this has all been a mistake, you're still pregnant. I imagined myself waking up and having 2 car carriers to carry around and load into the car. I'd wake at night from nightmares where I was following the sound of screaming babies but could never quite get there. I have a wonderful husband, I have incredible friends, but never in my life had I felt so completely alone. For the first time, I really began to understand how dark someone can feel and how hard it can be to stay afloat. I wondered if I'd ever smile again, if I'd ever laugh. When I tried to talk to my friends about it, I felt crazy saying some of the things aloud that I was feeling. Kind of like how Julie felt so horrible for being thankful that it wasn't her whose babies were dying. But those are normal thoughts. Those are thoughts that we all have. My friends, though, were really concerned about me. I remember someone emailing my husband and asking if he thought I was suicidal, which, I mean, I guess I would want people to check on that, but it just made me feel so much more misunderstood. People started urging me to have another baby because, after all, that will fix everything. It seemed like no one understood me, period. And then one night, I did a Google search. I typed, "My twins died," and I stumbled upon a blog. And at the time, I thought blogs were ridiculous because, like, who wanted to read about what this lady made for dinner or what that lady made out of popsicle sticks today? But this blog was different. It was so different. This woman had written a post that day about how she had had this huge blow-up argument with her family over pictures she had posted on social media. She posted a picture of her baby that day, and a family member messaged her to tell her, "That's disgusting. Nobody wants to see dead things." And she wrote in her blog, "What if the only memories you have of someone, they're already dead?" And in her writing, I recognized my pain. I stayed up the entire night and I read every post on her blog. It was as though her story was my own. And I began to comment, and before I knew it, I was spending pretty much my entire day reading other people's blogs and commenting, and Melissa and Alyssa are nodding because this is how we know each other. I am absolutely convinced that this saved me. Finding these other women, some of them from Australia and England and France and Madison and Los Angeles, they had lived through this, they were living through it with me, and suddenly I had hope. My body still hurt so bad from the pain of grief, but suddenly there was this tiny little glimmer of light. I would sit at night typing a blog post on my computer, crying so hard that I couldn't even see the screen. But I was getting out these feelings where I would say, I just want you to know that when I went to Target today, I walked through the baby section. I don't know why. And when someone asked me, I said, "Yeah, I'm pregnant with twins," even though I'm not, and my twins died. But I felt like pretending. And instead of people saying, "Are you crazy?" they said, "Yep, been there, done that." Suddenly, I was telling all of these strangers about my entire life. About how all I wanted was for people I know to say Sophie and Aiden's names. About how people ran away from me in my real life, and it felt like they weren't going to come back. About how I felt like a broken record, saying the same things over and over and over. And how sometimes I was so jealous that I would wish harm on other people, even though I didn't really mean it. I would still have those thoughts. I met my friend Alyssa. Can you wave, Alyssa? That's me and Alyssa at our book launch. And she wrote a blog about her sweet baby Kennedy, and she was always there for me, like this beam of sunshine. I mean, look at her, she is a beam of sunshine. Finding my people made every single day better. It was my source of strength. It was the only way I knew that I was not going completely crazy. And there were mamas that were like further out in their grief than I was. And some of them had gone on to have another living child, which gave me hope. Or some of them were just there to say, "You got this, yo, it's gonna be all right." Okay, so I'm gonna pause and I'm gonna read you a little part from my book, just because I said it better the first time than I could do now. So, the second half of my book is about how after I met all these people online and had sort of formed my community, I randomly got the idea to fly to Los Angeles to meet one of my blog friends in person, which, as you might imagine, like, this wasn't the 90s, you know, like, we could meet people from the internet, but flying to California to meet someone from the internet, my husband was maybe not so on board with that. So in the beginning of this chapter, I have these emails back and forth with Bree. So in the book, I have like pictures and our actual emails. And we were emailing back and forth because the weekend I had picked to go to Los Angeles, I was going along with my husband who was there for a work conference. But there was something going on that weekend called Carmageddon, which was basically the 405, which is one of two major highways in Los Angeles, was being closed down for the whole weekend so they could blow the road up. So when I had said, hey, I'm gonna be in Anaheim, let's have lunch, it turned into, well, I either have to come and get you and take you back to my house for the weekend, or I'm not gonna be able to see you at all. And so now, like, going along with my husband on a work trip, having lunch with my blog bestie turned into going to her house for a weekend with my daughter, who is 8.5 now and doesn't remember any of this, okay? So those are the emails. Brian, that's my husband, shrugged his shoulders. Is this something that you seriously want to do? Where will you and Avery sleep? Where does she even live? I really think that this is not a good option. I have to tell you, this feels very weird. I went to sit right next to him and I showed him the article. Look, right here, it says, Los Angeles braces for weekend of Carmageddon. I don't know. I think it's silly for me to sit in a hotel room when I could be hanging out with Bree and Nora. I Googled it, Carmageddon, it's a real thing. So that's one step closer to thinking we're not going to get kidnapped. I laughed and turned to look at him. He looked me in the eye, not amused. We have some actual issues here to think about. You won't have a car. What happens if you get there and her house is disgusting, or her husband is a creeper, and you're miserable? I'm not gonna be able to just come and get you. This feels really bad. I rolled my eyes. Babe, her house is in LA. LA is so cool. I think it's where all the D-listers live. I might even see a celebrity while I'm there. And they just moved into a new house and I've seen pictures, and her husband looks really nice. I'm sure he's really nice. Christy, you met her on the internet. I know it's not 1996, but here is this girl that you text and email, but you've never met her. He grabbed both my hands. I just want you to know, I think you are insane. I thought for a moment, think of it this way. I've made dinner plans with someone who I only met once or twice. They could have been a kidnapper. And Bree, I've known her, even if it is just on the internet, for 1.5 years. She loves Avery. This isn't a real stranger. It's gonna be good. It's gonna be great. Brian sighed and grabbed my hand. I guess I have to trust you on this one, but I want you to know I still think there's a chance that Bree is a lonely, sad, 60-year-old man looking for a girlfriend. Laughing, I hit him. Whatever. 6 weeks later, I sat on a hotel room floor, hovering behind Avery. Approaching her first birthday, she could pull herself up to a standing position now and cruise around, knocking things over and wobbling dangerously around sharp corners. I thought, we're about to do something really cool today. Pretty special. You and Mama are going to go meet our friends, Bree and Nora. They're kind of like our family. They are our people. We're going to have so much fun. Yeah, and Mommy met them on the internet, Brian added from the corner. My phone pinged. It was a text from Bree. 10 minutes away. My stomach dropped and somersaulted. I'd kind of been flippant about it in front of Brian, but now I maybe was freaking out a little bit. All right, baby Avery, let's get our bag in your car seat. It's time to go. I grabbed Avery, set her on my hip to head out to the elevator. I tugged my shirt down, switched her to the other hip. Then Avery grabbed my head and tousled my hair, so I set her down and started fussing with my hair. Brian looked at me like, why are you caring about your hair or your shirt right now? My nerves had set in. My phone pinged again. We're here, out front. I took a deep breath and I hoisted the diaper bag up onto my shoulder. Avery's legs were wrapped around my hip, her chubby hands squeezed tightly around my neck. I looked straight into her eyes, took a deep breath, and said, "Are you ready for this?" She looked back at me blankly, having no idea what she was about to do. We moved awkwardly out the door, Brian close behind with my suitcase and Avery's car seat. I wished I could hide. Why was I suddenly so nervous? I looked around for Bree, my mouth dry. Taxis were zooming all around the cul-de-sac in front of the hotel, and people in flowery shirts and sundresses were dragging their piles of luggage out of the trunks. I was distracted momentarily by a couple pushing a double stroller. A quick glance told me they were twins, so I looked away. Just then, out of the corner of my eye, through a crowd of people across the hotel's main parking lot, I spotted a flash of red hair. Holding my breath, I moved closer, knowing instantly that it was her. I watched her from afar as she fussed with the car seat strap and then straightened up and pulled out baby Nora. And as she turned, I realized I had been holding my breath. In that exact moment, she noticed me and she looked over and waved, and a grin spread across her face. After months, thousands of texts, this was back in the day when you didn't have unlimited text, and I would go over and my husband would be like, that's 10% per text, just so you know, or 10 cents, or whatever it was. Facebook messaging sessions, and there we were, a few feet from each other. How many times had I wished I could just go meet her for coffee, or go to a movie, or just give her a huge hug to let her know how grateful I was for her. And now it was happening. Before I knew it, she was on our way over to me. We set our girls on the grass in the shining warm sun, and we reached for each other. I squeezed with all my might, a year's worth of thank yous all wrapped up into this moment. Years worth of check-ins and caring for each other and making each other feel normal again. Here she was, my hero, the woman who had saved my life, close enough to finally embrace. I grabbed a plastic bag from the ground and pulled out the stuffed toys we had gotten the night before for the girls. They were soft and pink and had a little bell rattling around on the inside. Avery and Nora both still have those stuffed animals all these years later. I'd like to think that someday they'll recognize their significance. Seeing Avery and Nora next to each other stirred up this huge range of emotions. From amazement and joy that they were together, alive and happy, to this deep, deep sense of regret that the only reason we were there was because their siblings had died. To this day, I'm in disbelief that they lived, that our bodies, which had let us down in the most horrific way, had brought us these beautiful girls. And there they were, sitting next to each other in the California sunshine. That's pretty. Some of you in here today, you're so new in your grief, and some of you are veterans like me. This April will be 10 years since my twins died. And there is not a day that goes by that I don't think of them, remember them, and I plan to keep that up for the rest of my life. But I've put in the work. I've done the heavy lifting, and I've talked about my grief, and I've written about my grief, and I've drawn it and colored it, therapized it, and ran a half marathon through it, and it still lives in here, but it doesn't control me anymore. So right now, I'm gonna ask you to do me a favor. So if you are here today to remember a baby, if you are the mom or the dad to that baby, would you please raise your hand? Nice and high. Keep them up. How about a sibling? Other family members, grandparents, aunts, uncles, friends of someone, support. Okay, now grab the hand of the person next to you and squeeze it tight. No matter how much it hurts, no matter where you are, you've got this. Go out and find your people, work through your grief, and I promise you, you'll feel light again. And those of you that might already be there, don't forget to show others that it can be done. You can put your hands up. Your people might not be on the internet. They might not have been your NICU nurse or a girl in Los Angeles. But if you look around you in here today, these are your people. When Mike and Melissa Terrell founded Michaela's Grace, they started this incredible organization. They had dreams of bringing us together. Even though they were missing Michaela and Chase, they knew that they needed a community. We're here thanks to them and because of all our babies. We won't forget. We will not forget. Your people are here. We're everywhere.
Hi.
You've got this. Thank you.